We're back now live at the 2015 NAB Show Studio Experience. I'm Steve Waskell, and we're broadcasting to you from the show floor of the NAB Show in the Studio Experience broadcast studio. And our guest, Robert Herzan, is here. Robert, how are you?
I'm doing well, Steve. How you doing?
Very good, thank you. So you are the CEO of ScaleLogic.
Correct.
So for the folks that aren't familiar with ScaleLogic, it would be great if we could start by getting a brief overview of the company.
All right, I'll do the best I can to be brief. So,
well, you can take a couple minutes. It's an interesting story.
Well, yeah, ScaleLogic is actually a company that I started a couple of years ago, but the team that I brought together has over 30 years of experience of focusing into the media and entertainment market, selling file-based workflows, adding software and services to drive efficiencies. So most of my team has been with me really for a couple of decades. So might be a new company, but old souls that know the industry, know the people, and know the requirements and the needs. We've developed a value-added services messaging to the customer base where we take the experience that we've got to drive more of a consultative approach for storage infrastructures, use the partnerships we have globally, some very unique technology that we've developed with 3 different development teams, and we use that to basically come up with the right blend of storage infrastructure for these clients. Once we've got that and get it in play, we also put together support service contracts for that keeps them up and running. We know that the industry has a lot of requirements of meeting deadlines, so we make sure that the support services are there. We extended that from what we did in the past to actually open up those services to other types of equipment, primarily into the Tier 1 space. So guys like HP and IBM, EMC Isilon, those type of products where we can come in and do the additional services and give the customer more of a single company to support those storage-based infrastructures.
It makes a big difference. I remember talking to a gentleman. He was the CTO of a company called 1-800-Flowers. This was years ago. And I was asking about EMC and why EMC. And at that point, he came back with a comment about the fact that they would take care of him and recommend things that may not even EMC products because he just loved the service that he got. Mm-hmm. And it seems to me with what you guys are doing is you're working with fantastic companies and integrating the best-of-breed sort of solutions to tailor it for the end user so they can really lower their investment that they have to make by moving over to a different kind of a workflow. Because if you make a mistake, it can be very, very costly, especially if it's with assets in a media and entertainment company. Mm-hmm. So do you find that that's kind of the sort of niche that you're filling too, is but in a totally different way because you're actually getting down to the workflow?
We're getting down to the workflow, and this industry has so many different types of workflows. I mean, somebody deemed it years ago snowflake-based workflows. You know, every customer has a different style, a different requirement, multiple formats, different types of applications, operating systems. It's not like just building an IT infrastructure and it's the back-end accounting system for a business. This is serious workflows using high bandwidth requirements and severe uptime. What I wanted to build with ScaleLogic is there's lots of storage companies out there, and they sell a piece of storage. You know, they sell a type of network.
A piece of hardware, yeah.
Yeah.
And some software around it to administrate it.
Exactly, and then they try to fit that into everything, and it's not possible. You can't fit it into the budgets to meet all customers, small, medium, and large. You can't fit in the high availability aspects that you need, the scalability aspects. But we took it a bit further too. So we've got all this infrastructure pieces that we use to build out the solutions. We've got file system for building out the SAN and the NAS and the scale out NAS. But the real goal here is long-term partnerships with the customers, with our partners, by being able to come in at the beginning of the stage where they're just doing the design, help them make the right decisions, so that's the consultative side of it, help them make the decisions on the right product that meets the requirements now, what they want it to look like from a scalability in the future. Then we stick with them and we handle the support services. We've got a great technical team that understands the workflow. They understand the Avids and the Adobes, the Final Cuts, the various different applications out there. So when the customer calls, it's not a deer in headlight. They know what they're talking about and how it fits in the workflow. Then when we get to the end of the life cycle and it's time to refresh it, we actually have professional services team globally that can do things like data migration. They can do recycling of the hardware. We can do buybacks, trade-ins. So we never leave the customer side throughout the entire experience, and we're ready at the end to refresh them again and do it again for the next 5 years.
I really like the aspect too of recycling the old hardware. That's always such a sort of hassle. What do you do with all this old stuff, like the forklift replacement?
Yeah.
Where does the forklift take the stuff? You can't just get rid of it, right?
And I never actually had thought about it in what we were doing in this market in the past. We were just focused on putting these workflows together and helping the customer out. And one of my partners had spent 30 years doing nothing but this aftermarket services. So he had built this global infrastructure for doing the recycling and the takeouts. So we looked at it into this market, and I can't tell you how many production studios, how many broadcast facilities I'd go into. You'd get toured around, and you go down to the basement, and there'd just be racks and racks of stuff that have been decommissioned.
Yeah.
They don't know what to do with it. And there's all kinds of things that you got to worry about. There's compliance issues that you got to deal with. So we take care of that. You get signed documentation that it's been disposed of correctly, legally, within all the various different rules and laws based on Europe, US, and even into Asia. So it's a cool service that most of these guys don't have. The bigger companies, they may have a dumping ground, but a lot of our companies, they just don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, I had no idea you were getting into that. So that's really, really neat little bit of the story that makes you guys special.
You got to differentiate yourself, and you got to be valuable to the customers.
So file-based workflows, maybe we can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Where do you start when you're looking at a production company and you're trying to decide what is my best solution? Obviously, you mentioned contacting you early in the planning process to have an initial consultation and see what would make sense based on your experience, which is long time in the industry with all these products.
Yep.
Yeah, what would you recommend there?
It starts by actually being knowledgeable again of the workflows that are out there. And one of the first investments we've done, and we had it for decades, was an interoperability lab. So we have racks and racks, petabytes of storage, all the different networking, and have worked with all these ISVs to make sure that we have the applications so that we can do the testing, the bandwidth testing, looking at various different workflow cycles and all that. So we have a pretty good idea from the get-go when talking to a customer on what we're going to build. Then it comes down to a number of questions. So statement of work has been a Bible for us. That statement of work asks a whole series of questions on the primary storage, the bandwidth requirements, their infrastructure, looking at data protection and second tier, third tier storage, what their long-term goals are there. Do they have goals to move data from on-prem to off-prem? So all these questions get handled through the sales team and through our channel. That comes back into a team of, they're experts. They've been doing this forever. And they look at it, and based on budget requirements, based on applications that we're looking at, and what their future scalability is looking like, they will go and build that solution. Now, there's lots of different types of SAN, NAS, ways of do the piping. The one thing I think that we have that's just a leg up right now for the industry is HyperFS. It's a high-performance file system that allows customers to go with a single file system, and then we can help them make decisions on the piping and do it all under one global file system. So I can grow this file system into multiple petabytes. I can share it at a block level for those really high-performance fiber clients that you need. Mm-hmm. But I can also take and scale out either blade servers or gateways that allows you to share out that data into your gigabit network as well. So we can have one single large pool of storage that can do block level, that can do iSCSI block level or fiber block level, and or share out into 1 and 10 gig, 40 gig networks. So
from just one shared pool of storage.
One shared pool of storage. You can grow that pool on the fly, so you can grow capacity on the fly, you can grow performance in the background. And it's also somewhat agnostic to the storage. Now, the storage is a very important part of the bandwidth that you're going to drive through your SAN. And customers have legacy storage, and we can, look at the legacy storage, understand its performance, and we can tie that into a pool that can be put back into the HyperFS file system, or we can go with new storage, or maybe they have enterprise storage and they want to tie some of their enterprise storage in there. We've got the ability to do that, and we've tested several different types of storage, so it's very easy to grow file systems and utilize legacy storage.
It's always interesting to me to see the way storage has changed and how fast it's changed and how high the capacities have grown so quickly. I remember, if you just kind of look back, a company you might be working with might have much lower capacity drives than today. They may still be functioning, but if you look at the speed, the performance, the power usage and all that, a lot of times you might recommend going with new storage versus trying to do a blend of their old and new, just because the speed has increased so much and the power draw has gone down so much. Is that kind of where it's at?
We have a very mixed environment customer base here. So you've got small customers. These are the 4, 5, 6 editing stations that need to have the shared storage. You've got mid-sized customers that are going to end up with islands of workflow that they need to tie in. And then you get to the big guys and you've got the enterprise. The funny thing is it doesn't matter if it's a small, a mid, or an enterprise. A lot of the requirement is the same. It needs to be fast. It needs to have certain levels of uptime, and it needs to have that shared capability and then automation to protect them. Being able to use the legacy storage is one thing, but it normally becomes a second or third tier of archive. We probably wouldn't use it as a primary storage, and then we would move you up to the faster storage, the more redundant storage, mix and match of spinning disk and SSD.
Yeah, I know of some folks that look at this and they have all these drives that they basically archived all their old projects onto. Mm-hmm. And it's like, boy, one of these drives now could fit all of those drives on it. Maybe we should just migrate it up. But then there's always costs in that as well. Migrating the storage from point A to point B once you've taken it offline.
Yeah.
But if you don't, you run the risk of not getting access to that too. So for the smaller studios in particular, it just seems like they don't have the infrastructure or the budgets necessarily to always keep bringing the content up to the latest versions. Or do they, from your experience?
Well, some do, some don't. Depends on, are they getting new projects? Are they working with the same clients? I would say it's been interesting. So even today here at Studio Experience, I've probably had 30 different older legacy customers. This is back in the Rourke Data days when we ran a good part of the vertical market, and they're coming to me with storage that is in its 7th and 8th year that they had bought from us, and it's still working. And we're saying it's still working, but you want to move to this, and this, so now it's time to upgrade that. And most of those you just try to get out. They don't want to give them away because they're still working, but they just don't have the capacity or the performance.
Interesting. That's because it's still working. They really feel like they're giving up something they invested in.
Yeah. That's the smaller guy too. The mid guy, The mid guy, he's done somewhere between year 3 and year 5. The enterprise guy, right around year 3 or year 4.
So the smaller guys keep it a lot longer.
Yeah.
But even the performance of a standard hard drive today is better than an array of so long ago. Even those beautiful Rourke Data arrays you guys made.
Absolutely.
I remember those and seeing them at different shows and things. So what do you think about virtualization? Do you guys get involved in that at all? I mean, it's like if you have a big company, maybe you want to keep all your assets in the data center and then let people remote into it, but keep physical control of all the assets you have in the data center. Is that too big of a customer for you guys to deal with that, or is that something?
It's not too big, and where we've spent most of our time and experience in the last couple of years with that is with Hitachi Data Systems. Uh-huh. So Hitachi being a tier 1 organization, we've gone and partnered together globally, and we're using HyperFS as the file system that's driving now all of the Hitachi hardware. We use project management layers and HSM layers. We've taken that core infrastructure of the SAN and then partnered with about 30 different ISVs that are doing the media asset management and virtualization. And through our lab, we've gone through all kinds of certifications. And so we're there to handle the software infrastructure for managing the SAN, and Hitachi goes in to do the rest of the hardware piece of that.
Okay,
and
so
the data center.
Hitachi's a great partner for you then.
It's an incredible partner because they're a huge organization. They're very global in what they do, and they've got a great focus into the media and entertainment space, and a very talented group of individuals that understand it as well. So it was a perfect tie-in for us. ScaleLogic plays very well in doing that small to mid-size customer, but as soon as we go from mid to enterprise, then we use what we're good at with the file system and some of the management tools and tap into what Hitachi's good at, which is tier 1, highly scalable.
So do you typically tier your storage with, say, SSDs, enterprise class SSDs, or otherwise as your tier 1, and then have hard drives as tier 2, and maybe older hard drives or something else as tier 3? Or
It depends on the conversations that we're having with the customer. And SSDs are great. They're expensive, they're low capacity, very fast I/O. So there's certain applications that drive the SSD, and you can do tiering with SSD and spinning disk. So then you go to the next level of spinning disk that might be a 15,000 RPM, 10,000 RPM, or 72. Depending on the amount of spindles, the type of performance that primary storage is still looking for. From there, you would move into a secondary storage where you're going to go with probably more of a NAS-based equipment. It's going to be a lot less cost, but that's going to be your next tier that you're going to leave it to. One of the products that we do is it's HSM archive, so hierarchical storage management, that you would go from your primary disk over to the secondary disk, and our HSM will manage that. It's all policy based, so you can set it up based on the customer's workflow, and it automates then the archive. And that archive could sit on spinning disk for 3 months, 6 months, a year on less expensive spinning disk. And then after that point, it's going to move it over to some other medium, probably into tape, LTO6. Some people still go into DVD technology, or it may want to move it, off-prem and push it right out into a cloud instance or a remote data center.
So it's a wide range of engagements that you take. Yeah.
Like I said, that's the complexity of it, and you got to talk to the customer about the need, the requirement, the budget, what they're willing to do. And the beauty is we can really look at that and make the right choices for them, or give them options. A lot of companies, a lot of storage companies out there, they don't give them options. This is what we got. It's the greatest thing ever, and we want the customer to be educated and understand what the options are, so he's happy for a long period of time.
What about workflow solutions for file-based sharing amongst, say, multiple editors, graphic artists?
Mm-hmm. A good scenario there is you've got your post-production, so you're ingesting all your content, you're going into a shared, central storage with HyperFS.
Like we are here working with you in Studio Experiences
exactly
here at
like here.
Sounds
it's right
like
on
that.
the side.
That's what I was getting to. Yeah.
Okay, I see. Good straight man there. I'm picking up on it now. So exactly what we did here. So you've got all these camera feeds coming in, and we're taking those camera feeds and we're ingesting those right into the HyperFS SAN, into a big pool of storage, and then we've put clients out on your editing system. So we're running Adobe here for the workflow, and those clients now have access to the SAN. And those clients could be Windows, they could be Mac, they could be Linux-based clients. They could have all kinds of different applications to it. Now that's all more block level collaboration. And then when you get into the VFX side of things, a lot of times with the VFX, because of the workflow, the smaller files that they're working with, but the millions of files that they're working with, then they look more for a scale-out NAS type configuration. And so being able to put Song on there and give them that scale-out NAS under that same shared storage saves them an entire amount of time. Because in the past, what we do is you would have a scale-out NAS, and that would be running your VFX. Then you'd have your shared storage high-performance SAN, and that was doing your ingest and your post work. Well, when you wanted to get any of that over to your VFX, you were doing copies, over to the other storage arrays so that it could go out and chunk away and do it. And we're giving that ability to take that island and this island and connect them to that one piece of storage, so they don't have to do that.
I really like having that shared storage pool like that. It's amazing how much content gets created. I mean, just in the setup here, we were anticipating 20-something terabytes, but recalculating it, looks like it would be more than 30 terabytes of data just from 3.5 days of filming.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot of data to manage and making sure that you don't lose any of it. So it's really important that people have a good storage solution. So if you lose your content, you're gone. We can't redo this interview and have it just work, right?
Well, that's an awesome point, and one that the customers are still learning. You know, we've been in the digital age for a long time, but there's still a lot of analog, behavior out there. And it used to be great. You know, you'd go out and you'd shoot off your analogs, and you'd come in there and you'd ingest it into your nonlinear, but you always had that tape. And that was the backup, that was the archive, and that's the thought process that they've had forever. Now, everything's being captured digitally with the cameras. It's being put into there. You want to wipe that SSD off as quick as you can because they're extremely expensive, and you want to put them back in your camera.
Right.
So, it's an afterthought on, okay, we put it in there. It's in a RAID. It's fine. It's not going to go anywhere. Well, no, it's not fine. I've got this great slide that shows, 100% of what can happen to your data. And, there's 7% here and 20% here. But 30% of it is user error that erases the data. So if they don't have a second instance of the data, if they don't have an archive, if they don't have a backup, they're going to be at risk. And we talk to customers about a theory or a practice, 3-2-1, having 3 copies of your data on 2 technologies and 1 at least off-premise.
Remote, yeah.
And we really focus in with it, but not all customers can afford that either. So we'll try to get them there, but if they can't, we're at least going to have 2 copies. We're going to try to go with 2 technologies for them. The other thing is understanding the data and getting it back. And do you need it back in minutes? Do you need it back in hours? Or can you get it back in days? And there's 3 different policies or processes of how we would build that data protection for them based on their answers to those questions. There's the creative process, there's the recreation of the data and the time, and
what's that too?
And what downtime really costs them. There's all kinds of statistics you can figure out to the ROI on how much money you're going to invest to save that data.
Yeah, it's wonderful talking to you.
You too.
Thanks so much for joining us.